Hi, I'm Matthew Goldstein, Chancellor of the City University of New York. Welcome to our program, CUNY Honors. I am very pleased to have with me two student scholars who represent a new generation of CUNY students. These two students, named 2005 Rhodes Scholars, are the embodiment of the CUNY experience. I once referred to the Rhodes Scholarship as the apex, the Mount Olympus of all scholarships. I don't think that this is an exaggeration. Each year, 32 are chosen, and this year, 2 are from the City University of New York. Eugene, is it true that your father taped a sign to your front door that said, "Home of the Rhodes Scholarships for 2005?
Yes, it is.
Lev, I heard that you thought the Rhodes Scholarship was for refined individuals, people who would drink tea with their pinky up and come from an Ivy League school. That description is not exactly who you are. Eugene Shenderoff is a chemistry major at Brooklyn College in their BA MD program. He is the president of the Brooklyn College chess team, a 3-letter winner on the men's tennis team, a member of the Golden Key International Honor Society at Brooklyn College, and a director of the Brooklyn College Emergency Medical Squad. Lev Shvirdov is also majoring in chemistry at the City College of New York. He is a winner of the Goldwater Fellowship in Science. Lev is a permanent member of the Glassnot Public Foundation to the United Nations, and he was elected student government president of his class at City College. Both of these students emigrated from the Soviet Union. Eugene, Lev, welcome. It's good to see you both.
Good to be here. Thank
Eugene, you chose to come to Brooklyn College. Why that decision? I'm sure you had lots of options, but what about Brooklyn College attracted you?
The finances, the fact that for my family who had immigrated from the former Soviet Union, specifically Ukraine, in 1990, the finances were an attractive offer to attend Brooklyn College. In addition, I heard from some of the former alums of Brooklyn College that in their heyday it was a great college, and to this day they kept in contact with some of the professors. So both the faculty and the financial opportunity was a very motivating factor.
Now you applied and were admitted to a very coveted program, the joint BA MD program. Could you describe a little about how that joint relationship works? Are you accepted to medical school immediately at the time of your application, or?
Yes. Upon interviewing, you basically interview for both Downstate Medical School and the Brooklyn College undergraduate program. And once admitted to Brooklyn College, you are guaranteed a seat at Downstate Medical School upon matriculation from the undergrad portion, as long as you keep specified conditions such as a 3.5 GPA and get other predefined conditions.
I see, and I'm going to come back to how you plan to integrate medical education with your interest in pure science. Lev, you came here as a young boy, at about 11 or 12 years old, if I recall,
Right.
and obviously circumstances occurred over that time. Why the City College of New York?
Well, it's actually, the story is quite similar to Eugene's story. Certainly finances were a major element, and back then actually tuition was $3,200, and that was something that we could afford without actually going into loans. And Pell and the TAP grants would supplement my entire tuition. But the second element was much more important. That was the personal element. I graduated from the Ethical Culture Fieldston School in Riverdale, and it was a different type of society there. Just the people were from more upscale backgrounds, and I was an immigrant student who barely spoke English at the time. And I tried to find a support base for myself, and I found that support base with the faculty and the good friends who brought us there. And the faculty I found at Fieldston, some of them were from City College. And when I was applying for the colleges, they said, go to my alma mater. It has taught me well, it has served me well, and it has a significant historical point in American history in being the first public institution of higher education, and that meant a lot to me. Then also my participation with our science teams brought me to City College several times, and my chemistry teacher, Ms. Snyder, introduced me to the Associate Dean at City College of Science, who then essentially recruited me to the chemistry department. So I felt at home, I felt welcome, I felt wanted, and I chose to go there.
So at Fieldston, there were some advocates for the City College because the teachers that you had were trained there, and they obviously had a good experience.
Absolutely.
So now you arrive on the City College campus. Did you have an idea at the time, a thirst to study science, and in particular chemistry? Was that molded a little earlier, or?
Well, that came out, I think, also from the immigrant experience. I could not communicate very well, so I found a home with numbers. I found a home with new symbols where we were all in an equal playing field. We had to learn the periodic table, and I felt very comfortable being finally equal with everyone else in the classroom. Same opportunities, same level of expertise. And I arrived wanting to be a chemist. And City College really took that desire and took it to the next level. They said, not only do you have to learn things in the classroom, you should do research. And I heard that on the very first day at City College in general chemistry. And I followed through with that, and it has brought me to where I am today.
So the faculty were encouraging you right at the early stages. We want to get you into the laboratory, take a look at our experiments, work with us. And you became a bench scientist right at the very beginning.
Well, not really a bench scientist. I first went into theory.
Right.
I spent 4 years in theory and protein, 3 years in theory and proteins. But the faculty said, look, if you want to be a true chemist, you have to do research. It wasn't the question of, do you want to do it with me, someone else? You just have to do it, period. Because otherwise, what are you going to do afterwards? What are you going to do for graduate school? What are you going to do later? And I said, graduate school? I'm a freshman in college. And they said, no, graduate school is the next step. Right now you have to start working, and after the next 4 or 5 years you have to start thinking about, you have to be in a graduate school and with a sense of direction.
So they were forcing you to think strategically.
Right.
And that's very important. Eugene, let's get back to you. You now are at Brooklyn College. You've been accepted into the BA MD program. I imagine that program is, what, 7 years?
It's 8.
It's 8 years.
Full 4 years undergrad and full 4 years in medical school.
So what happened along the way? I mean, you became a chess player, or I'm sure you were a chess player before, but you honed your skills. You became a tennis player. So you started to branch out to get a more broad-based education. What were the early experiences in terms of your classes that led you to think in much broader horizons and opened up your eyes to things that you didn't think of before?
Well, I think it's sort of referring back to actually the motto of the BMD program. It's specifically geared to give physicians in training, if you consider it undergrads physicians in training already, a more humanistic background. So we're encouraged actually to major outside of science, actually. So when since I'm majoring in chemistry, I actually am minoring in non-sciences as well. That's a precondition. And a lot of the faculty I had some great professors for sociology, for some of my philosophy classes. They really introduced a new perspective in terms of studying philosophers like Kant and Hume, who I had never really touched upon in high school, and sort of shifting the perspective from science per se overall to how everything ties into one another. So it was a very interesting experience at the time.
Was there an epiphany at some point with a particular professor that just sort of opened up your ideas and perspectives on big things, a little different than you thought before? Any ones that you want to mention on air today that really touched you in very special ways?
I think to a large extent, every professor I've encountered so far, I think with pretty much no exceptions, has contributed a little piece to the big epiphany, as one would put it, in their own special way. I mean, I had a wonderful professor for my initial chemistry professor. This is actually how I went into chemistry. I wasn't sure which field I would major in. I wasn't sure if it was going to be biology, inorganic chemistry, biochemistry, and I had a professor named David Goldberg for the beginner chemistry courses. I believe he started teaching in Brooklyn College in the 50s, so he was one of their veteran professors. He actually retired after I had him. And one day we were sitting in his office, and he was we were chatting about his class and just in general my freshman experience thus far. I was first semester freshman. And somehow we got on the topic of a major, and I said, well, I've been contemplating maybe biology, maybe nutrition, maybe chemistry. And he said, do you like chemistry? I said, yeah, I guess so. He took out the paperwork and said, let's sign you up.
Well, he actually saw talent and a spark there, and I'm sure this was a great setup, but good for him. Lev, the Rhodes Scholarship, at what point in your career at City College did the idea that this would be an opportunity that could be made available to you, how did that come about? Who talked to you about it? How does Lev Shvidov hear about being a Rhodes Scholar?
Well, essentially, all this time I've been following scholarships online, at fastweb.com. And because I always was looking for scholarships, I needed financial support, and all the talk and being aware of all the talk up in Albany about cutting taps, keeping tap, Pell, that's on every student's mind. And, about 7 days before the deadline, I looked online and said, well, you have the criteria for the scholarship. So I walk into our honor center, who in about a week put together the Coldwater application with me. I walk in, and they were sitting around the table. I said, oh, great, the dream team is here. I think I should apply for the Rhodes Scholarship. And they said, well, how much time do we have? I said, 6 days. I said, okay, we can do it. And that's how the dream was born.
Isn't that wonderful? So
Yeah.
the faculty were really there for you.
Everyone was there for me.
They really helped you along the way.
They absolutely have. The staff at the Honors Center, in the provost's office, the faculty. When I just walked up to them, I said, could you write me a letter? They said, well, how much time do we have? Is it more than a week? I said, well, you have 12 days, I have 6. They said, okay, that's more than enough for you.
What are the, I'm sure our audience is not familiar with the criteria that are required for consideration to be a Rhodes Scholar. Could you share some of those criteria with us?
I guess one of the most important elements is being well-rounded. You have to be not only a scientist, you have to be also a social activist. And your activism needs to go beyond participation in local politics like student government or with a local council member. I think what they're looking for is for a global leader to fight the world's fight, as the quote goes. And I have certainly done that, and others who were in the running for this scholarship also have done that. And that is something that I think brought all of us together, a sense of global urgency and a kind of a global vision that every candidate shares.
And Eugene, obviously you had similar kinds of assistance, I would imagine, from Brooklyn College. What was the guiding principles that some of the faculty said you need to adhere to, and the strengths that you need to amplify for the reviewers and so forth?
Well, I think the way to sum this up is the day after I found out that I had gotten a scholarship, and I told the faculty, some of them said, well, look at that. We didn't embellish anything and you still got it. That's the way to go. Throughout the process, I mean, again, just like Lev put it, the faculty at Brooklyn College, especially in the scholarships office, and the professors who worked with me, they were all very helpful. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to submit the application. And throughout the process, they constantly kept saying, let's keep this the way it is. There's no reason to embellish it even slightly. I mean, in the end, it can only hurt you. So I think we kept it as down to earth as we could. They even kept, at one point I remember they said, well, your application looks good, but maybe you should actually try to say a little more than you're saying. You're probably being a little too humble. So they were very helpful.
You know, the message that the both of you are saying, and you've said it over and over again in many public settings, is how extraordinary the faculties are at the City University of New York. They really care about students.